interview took place between William Gallo and Unai Emery.
You've come to replace a legend at the club, Arsene Wenger, in a time of transition within the institution. Why did you think Arsenal signed him?
One of the main reasons was to be a club man, and to be a club man in the sense of following the objectives of the club, which were firstly a return to the UCL that year, as they had missed out on it after many years, and being a club man was knowing how to organise the transition of certain important footballers, such as the departure and ending of the contract of Petr Cech, the departure and contract termination of Laurent Koscielny, Aaron Ramsey, Nacho Monreal, and the arrival of young players that had to be assessed and the best and most successful way found to integrate them and to find out how they could be mixed with the most important players that we already had. And the knowledge that decisions taken at the club should be supported and reinforced within, my calculated judgment.
You arrive at the club that's not competing at its top level, which is what they expected. Having seen your teams in other leagues competing.
Another reason that the club considered me when hired was so that we could be competitive. I had shown that I was a competitive coach, always looking for that brilliance that Arsenal already had, combined with that competitiveness that they had lost, which meant they came up short whenever they tried to make it to the top 4 places in the Premier League. We were looking to be effective as much as brilliant. Looking to work on the details, the tactical details where we could be stronger as a unit, and that is also one of the main things that I've managed to develop at my previous clubs.
And what is more, you find yourself at a club with young players and stars, something that you had encountered before at your previous clubs. The likes of Neymar, Mbappe, David Silva, Villa, in some cases at the start of their careers. Do you think that affected Arsenal's decision to hire you?
Another of the reasons why they hired me was that I had a career behind me back in my status, and they also considered that I was still more or less quite young for a coach, especially one with the level of experience that I had, having coached some very important players, such as you mentioned before, Neymar, Mbappe, Thiago Silva, Cavani, and in their time also David Silva, Villa and Rakitic. So what the club was also looking for was this type of experience with this level, within this level of football, while at the same time the development I had already enjoyed with these types of players. In all my sides, I always had one main goal-scoring frontman, someone that was always highlighted as one of the top goal scorers in the league. In fact, that's what happened with Aubameyang in the Premier League last season. But I also had it before with Cavani, David Silva and Carlos Bacca, because the path I set is about the aims and objectives of important players in the squad, and also the development of young players so they can bring success to your side or prove to be sound economic investment should they be sold later on, as has occurred a number of times with me and in different clubs. And also, whenever I sit down with the directors of a club, this is one question I always ask, I'd like to ask, why do you want me? Then I know exactly what is expected of me, and I can establish the basis from where I operate as a coach.
You came from Sevilla, where you won a title, and PSG, where you won 7. Did Arsenal tell you they expected you to win titles?
Well, one of the important aspects of my development has been my ability to play for and win titles. Today, I have competed in 13 finals and I have won 10 of them. I have won 3 Europa Leagues, and I was joining at a time when the club were also looking at the opportunity of once again winning titles. As it is, they have been in Europe for 20 years without a European final. And last year we played in the final against Chelsea, but we were unable to win it. But it's certainly true that there was a thought that said, why shouldn't we be able to win it? As a coach whose objectives align with ours, a coach who has won titles, that is used to playing finals, that is capable of playing important knockout matches and winning them, then obviously Arsenal would have to be thinking very much along those same lines.
And you began well. In your first 50 matches, you were the best coach in Arsenal's history. Later, there was not such good news, but at the beginning, in your first season, you went 22 games without losing, and you went to the final of the Europa League. Was the club defining itself into more or less what you were looking for?
The truth is that in the first year, I was very pleased, and the only thing left for me to do was to put the rubber stamp on the season with a win in the final of the Europa League. Having already played 2 excellent knockout matches against UCL opponents, such as Valencia and Napoli, where we were competitive and brilliant, with great results, where over the 2 games in the knockout stages we looked powerful, and we played in the final against Chelsea, where we had a great first half in a tactical sense, and where, in my opinion, we could have taken control of the game. However, in the second half, Hazard separated both sides and Chelsea won the match. And in the league, we swam right up to the shore and then died on the beach. We were also competing in the Europa League, where perhaps the efforts we made left us with too much to do because we were in the top 4 for the last games, and we effectively lost it at home in 2 games against Brighton, which we drew, and against Crystal Palace, where we lost, at a time when we were heavily involved in the knockout stages of the Europa League. There were things that happened that impeded our chances of responding, as well as we would have wanted, such as the injuries to Rob Holding, Bellerin, and to Aaron Ramsey, who was at his best until he was injured against Napoli, which left us having to use different players in some very important games over a short period of time. But it's true that I was very satisfied with how things went, because I believe we learned how to become a team. At times, a team that shone, but a team that was effective and competitive. And a team that in general was what we were talking about as to the reasons why Arsenal signed me. I believe we achieved that, and we just needed to make that final step.
That's it. Having the platform in place of a team that had begun to recognise itself, why did you not climb up to the next level?
Well, this season, theoretically, we also began well, and I had the feeling, and so did the club, that the achievements of the previous seasons were valued, and that we were now looking to how we could develop together, even to the point where they were looking to offer a renewed contract. Then I remember we had 1 month at one of the international breaks. We were 3rd in the league, and then in the first game after we came back from the break, I remember that the frustrations from bad results were beginning to make us worse for the following matches. We were in fact losing confidence, and it's also true to say losing a bit of stability. The game against Sheffield United was a bit of a turning point. In 1 month, everything got broken, and we were incapable of winning a game in 7. And the tension, based on the questions we were being asked, like what's happening to us, was like a rolling ball that was just getting bigger and bigger. And the truth is that the coach is always the first person to come into the spotlight. You know, I have lived this at other clubs, but I've always managed to conquer it. Basically by getting the team back on track as regard to the game and results. But the truth here at Arsenal that month was terrible.
What is football like? In a period of a few months, a club goes from planning the contract renewal of its leader to showing him the door. I imagine these things really hurt because quite clearly all of your senses are focused on trying to make the team better. How do you cope with it on a personal level?
The truth is I bore it within the same context of the difficulty of the task that I had been facing. I even had friends or people at my side who would say to me, "I can see you're suffering." And I would say, naturally, when a coach doesn't win, he suffers. And when he doesn't win 2 or 3 or 4, he suffers more. But we had to win to regain our emotional equilibrium, to get rid of that frustration, and we couldn't. And what is true, the social mass of Arsenal, which is very big, couldn't see it. They couldn't connect with what was happening. And in the situation, as it happens in every country and with every team, the coach finds himself targeted. I spoke to the players 3 or 4 weeks before the process began to tell them that things were not going well and that I couldn't see the team I pictured on the field of play. I couldn't identify, what it was I was looking for. We looked for solutions. At times, defensively, we had to be stronger. So we went with 3 central defenders. We were trying to find a way to tactically synergize Oba, Ozil and Lacazette. And those tactical situations that we got in so that everyone could play the best possible in their position. And yet the results still didn't come. Anyway, the club made this decision that was passed on to me by Raul with much regret, because he also felt his share of the responsibility, and we were very united. But the situation had become volatile with protests from a section of the fans. Although I believe there was another important section that believed that we could have been shown more patience and carried on with the project.
At times like this, I am always fascinated by the behaviour of all the parties involved. You talk about the fans, for example. The talk is of a toxic atmosphere in the stadium, that you would walk into the stadium and you knew there wasn't the positive energy necessary for a team to respond, for the players to perform. Did you note that?
All the games I tried to present to the players as an opportunity to connect with the fans, and especially at home in the Emirates. The team had to play with energy, needed to be capable of being solid in defence and in attack, aggressive, with the ability to take the game to the opposition, and on that basis begin to be effective to score and to win. That's what we did. It is true that on occasions we managed to connect with the fans, but without effect. And later we certainly failed to be solid, to be a unit that the opposing sides would struggle to get the better of. For me, one of the determining things, and something I will be proud of, is that at home, and this is the difference between the Premier League and the Europa League, in the Europa League the team was not losing. In the event of my dismissal, that came after we lost against Eintracht Frankfurt in the Europa League, which was the only game that we lost. But in the league, although we didn't win, we didn't lose. We were at breaking point, and that day it snapped. And yes, it is true there was a frustration because we couldn't get to the point we wanted to. I think, however, we could have turned things around. But I also understand that those at the top have to take decisions and take responsibility.
What would you do differently? Which is another way of saying, where did you go wrong? If that is You have to have time to reflect on those times and over the project in general and your adventure with Arsenal.
Last season, we made the progress we wanted. We even played in the final, and we were close to playing in the Champions League. In the league, we were in the running for a top 4 place right until the last few games, and this year we had to consolidate. We wanted to consolidate, so we brought a few things in with a view to making things better and covering the needs of the team, and it's true to say that in 1 month everything fell apart. The emotional stability was shattered, as were all those things that we believed were in place to enable us to get better. We did not manage to be strong defensively. This was one of the greatest problems that I had yet to conquer.
But why?
As far as the defensive-offensive equilibrium needed to win is concerned, we played a game against Liverpool in the Capital One Cup, where we drew 5-5. And I, as a coach, thoroughly enjoyed that game. But of course, what you want to do is win. A game like this, you want to win 0-5 and not draw 5-5, or even worse, get beaten 5-0. So in this game, there were many examples of what we were doing. We had a team more than capable in an offensive situation, but defensively feeble. This was the process we had to go through to become more competitive. Last year, we occasionally managed to achieve this equilibrium. This year, we started well with a 0-1 win at Newcastle, and a 2-1 win at home to Burnley, and a 1-0 win over Bournemouth. But we were unable to maintain this defensive strength, and this is one of the bases. And also, when the team gets a sense of its own impotence, those up front see that things aren't going well at the back. Those at the back say, we need to be more compact, starting with you people up front. And in the finish, the resulting conflict and lack of equilibrium at the vital time, when people needed to be assuming a responsibilities, showed itself clearly.
When doubts enter the heads of the player, it's a virus that spread, no? Was there a lack of confidence? Was it clear that the team was expressing itself to the maximum, neither individually nor collectively?
Yes, a victory might possibly have arrested this situation, but it's true to say that the team had to look for defensive and offensive adjustments in order to try to arrive at being that unit capable of bringing out our brand of imposing football. We managed to do it last year. This season, we didn't.
Much is made of your ability to communicate. In the beginning, you arrived and did a press conference. You hadn't slept all that day, had you?
We had come in from Atlanta, where we had been with the Gronkies.
You do it in English, and when things go well, people don't pay much attention to the fact that your English is something that you are working on. In fact, you spend hours away from training trying to learn the language, no?
I had a ground base of English simply because I hadn't had the opportunity to develop my English more. And I had 2 years in France where I concentrated much more on my French. So when I arrived in England, the first thing I said to myself is, I have to learn to speak English. And the club not only helped me, but also encouraged me to speak English, even with all the difficulties, which is why I made that effort. I have always made this effort for my first press conference, to speak to the players in English, and to finish my last press conference speaking in English, and I believe progressively speaking it better. Communications in football is very important, and it has been one of the basic foundations of my successes in Spain. In France as well, limited as it is, but I also managed to learn enough French. However, here in England, in this process, I wanted to lift my level of communication in English to a higher level.